When my daughter told me she couldn't afford me at the wedding, I thought I heard the kettle scream, though it was only in my chest. The evening light was soft at my kitchen window. It turned the steam from the kettle into a small, silver ribbon. My sewing machine sat quiet on the thrifted table, as if it too held its breath. Before I tell you the whole story, I want to welcome you. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'm pouring you a cup of tea in my mind, and I'm glad you're here with me. We will go slowly and kindly. This will not be a revenge story. No one will be shouted down. I am going to speak softly, the way I would if we were sitting in this small kitchen together. I will tell you the truth, and I will tell you with love. I do not say I was brave when I heard those words. I went very still. I watched the kettle tremble on the burner and set it aside before it boiled over. My hands know how to steady hot things. There is more to the story, and I will take care with it. There is something my daughter does not know I discovered yesterday. It is important, but we will not rush to that part. We will let the story breathe the way bread rises under a clean cloth. You should know how my days sound. The hum of the sewing machine, the click of a spool, the whistle of the kettle that marks the hours like a simple bell. It is a quiet life, and I love it. When Nora said, "We can't afford you," I tried to make sense of the words. To be an expense to your own child is a kind of ache that sits low and wide. I wanted to be polite to her pain, even if it was my own. I did not argue. I swallowed my breath. So, listen with me. I am going to hold this gently, and I ask you to hold it with me. We will begin in the small places. We will walk at the pace of a heartbeat. And when we reach yesterday, you will understand why I am speaking like this. I promise you a tender story about a mother and a daughter. Not a perfect story, a real one. There will be a moment where you might want to take sides. I will invite you instead to sit with me and look at the whole table. I live in a one-bedroom apartment that stays tidy because it has to. The thrifted table by the window is scarred with old marks and warm with use. My sewing machine sits there, sturdy and faithful. It has a friendly hum. That hum paid for shoes and rent and school trips where the buses left before dawn. On most mornings, I stitch hems until my shoulders loosen and my thoughts get quiet. In the afternoons, I sometimes take shifts as a home caregiver. I help an older gentleman with his pills and his radio. He likes the crooners from the old days. I fold his blankets in neat squares and make us both tea. Neighbors know my door is the one that smells like simple soup. They bring me pants to take in, curtains to shorten, a sleeve that came loose, a zipper that lost its way. I keep a jar of buttons and a jar of pins. I keep a paper calendar on the wall, and I like to cross off each day with a pen that hums a little like the machine. Every Sunday at 6, my phone rings. It is my daughter, Nora. That has been our time since she went away to school. "Tell me everything," I say. "I made soup," she says, "with carrots like you taught me." I raised her mostly by myself after her father left. I do not tell this part with anger. He was young and scared. He was kind to our baby while he was there. Then he was gone. He left a note with a promise he couldn't keep. After school, Nora would drop her backpack by the chair and climb up on the counter while I cooked. "How was your day?" I asked. "Good," she said. "We read about whales." Sometimes we split a pair between us and leaned against the sink like two tired sailors. She grew fast and tall and serious. The years were counted in the hems of her pants. When something was too long, I fixed it. When something was too short, I tried to let it out. The bills were like fabric sometimes. You do what you can with what you have. There was a school play one spring. She didn't get the lead. She was the river. We made a blue sash from a roll of ribbon I found on sale. "Make it shiny, Mom," she said, "so people will see how the water moves." I stitched tiny sequins where they would catch the light, and she twirled in our kitchen like a spring itself. In those years, I started a jar on the top shelf. We called it the wedding jar, though there was no wedding in sight. We dropped coins into it when we found them under couch cushions or in the dryer. The label said someday. Sometimes we shook the jar just to hear the happy clink. We did not have much, but we had a way of making things feel special. Friday nights were for library books. Birthdays were small cakes with too many candles because I liked the light. At Christmas, we hung thrifted lights in our window and watched the snow try to catch them. When Nora was a teenager, she worked weekends at the bakery. She came home with flour on her cheeks and stories in her pockets. I made her prom dress on the floor, cutting paper patterns with hands that had cut 100 times before. "It's perfect," she whispered when she tried it on. "No one else will have this." College was a dream we said out loud only in the kitchen. We pinned brochures to a cork board by the stove. When the acceptance letter came, she put her hands on her mouth and cried. I sold a finished quilt I had been saving to help with the deposit. The sewing machine sang long and late those nights. Move-in day was a lot of boxes and a lump in my throat I pretended was a cough. I put her winter coat in the top of her closet and a note in the pocket. "Love you. Eat warm food. Call me anytime." On the bus home, the city lights looked like a handful of needles in the dark, and I kept my palm face up in my lap as if I was still holding her hand. She studied hard. She learned names I had never heard and used words like project and deadline with a kind of pride. She found an internship, then a job. She called me on Sundays anyway. "Tell me everything," she said. "I made soup," I said, "with carrots like you taught me." When she first told me about Mark, she sounded light. "He's kind," she said. "He listens." The first time they came to visit, he brought daisies in a jar and a respectful hello. He took off his shoes at the door without being asked. He called me Ms. Alvarez, and I said, "You can call me Maria." He was polite and careful with his hands, like he knew they could break things. After dinner, he asked, "Can I help with the dishes?" I said, "You can dry." He did, and he stacked the plates in even towers. I could tell he was raised to make impression and avoid trouble. There are worse things to be. I met his mother, Patricia, at a lunch the next month. It was a place with white tablecloths and small forks I didn't recognize. She rose when we came in, tall and neat, and gave me a smooth hand to shake. "Call me Patricia," she said, and a waiter pulled out my chair before I knew whether to sit. I checked the menu twice and chose the soup, though I was hungry. The price beside it made my chest feel warm, as if I'd already eaten. Patricia asked about my work with a careful smile. I told her about stitching hems and how I liked the rhythm. "How lovely," she said, and the word hung in the air like a ribbon with no knot. She wasn't unkind to me. She was exact. Her napkin was folded like a book, and she held her glass at the stem. I adjusted my own napkin twice, then put my hands in my lap. The talk moved to venues and dates, and the room seemed to get larger while I tried to stay the same size. Back at home, the wedding felt far away and sweet. On our Sunday calls, Nora and I played with ideas. "Little flowers," I said. "Maybe a ribbon somewhere." She laughed. "You and your ribbons." I told her I would love to sew her a veil one day. "If you want, and only if it feels right." Sometimes I heard new words from her that I had to write down and look up. The planner said we should meet the vendors. "We're viewing a suite." I thought sweet was sweet at first and wondered why a room would taste that way. I smiled and nodded and later asked the internet like a quiet student in the back row. A few months after that lunch, Nora invited me to dinner in the city. It was a restaurant where the plates looked like white, flat stones. I checked prices and chose the simple fish, and the waiter asked if I wanted to pair it with something I had never heard of. "Just water," I said, and my voice sounded small to my own ears. The talk at the table wasn't meant for me, though no one was rude. "We're thinking plated service," Mark said. "Maybe 10 top tables." Patricia said, "We can comp rooms for the wedding party." I watched Nora's eyes. They were bright and a little tired. She squeezed my hand under the table, and I squeezed back twice. At home that night, I took a piece of ivory netting from a drawer and held it against the light. It was nothing special to anyone else. To me, it was a promise I could make with my hands. I rolled it up and tied it with a blue thread, in case she asked someday. Our Sunday calls kept their soft rhythm. We spoke about soup and work and the weather. We spoke about silly shows we watched at the same time on our own couches. We spoke about weddings without the weight of them. "What do you think about wildflowers?" I asked. "I like flowers that don't try too hard." She laughed. "You always say that." Her voice was the same voice that once asked me to make water shine on a blue sash. "Maybe a ribbon," she said. "Just a small one." I pictured it in my mind and tucked the picture away like a note in a pocket. Sometimes, when I visited, she and Mark took me to places where the chairs felt like they could expire under someone who wasn't careful. The napkins were heavy. The music was quiet. People said words like aesthetic and curated, and I tried to hang my coat on a word that would hold it. Often I chose to hang it on love. I do not think there is anything wrong with nice things. I like a new spool of thread as much as anyone. But I am from a world where people check the price 3 times and drink water with gratitude. I began to feel the edges of our worlds, like 2 pieces of fabric you want to join but need a careful seam. I did not worry then. I believed the seam would hold because our love had been stitched for years. I believed there would be a little place for me to stand, no matter how grand the room. I believed my hands would be useful. I did not know yet how carefully I would have to hold my own heart. I kept working. I kept saving. I put a few dollars in an envelope marked travel, though no one had asked me to. I oiled my machine and pressed the foot pedal and let the hum settle me. The kettle sighed. The window took the day's light and folded it into soft squares on my floor. Those were the days before the hard words came. They were soft days. They were days full of small, good things. If I had known what was ahead, I might still have lived them the same, with soup and stitches and Sunday calls, and a jar on the top shelf that still said, "Someday." The day Nora called to tell me she was engaged, the kettle sang before I even put it on the burner. My hands shook a little as I lifted it, and I laughed at myself. Joy can feel like hunger. It makes you clumsy and wide awake at the same time. I set the kettle down and pressed the phone close to my ear. "Mom," she said, and I heard a sound I had not heard since she was little. It was a laugh tangled with a sob. "He asked me." I sat down at the table so I wouldn't drop the phone. "My baby," I whispered, and then I said, "Tell me everything," the way I always do on Sundays, except this was not Sunday. This was lightning in the middle of a plain day. She told me where he asked, in a small park where the light made a patchwork through the leaves. She said the ring was simple and lovely. She said she cried, and then he cried, and a dog ran by and shook its collar like tiny bells. The kettle started to tremble on the stove, even though the burner wasn't on yet. I laughed again. "Even the kettle knows," I said. "I know," she said. "Oh, Mom, I'm happy." I looked up at the top shelf and saw the jar that had been waiting. The label said "Someday." My hand reached for it without me telling it to. I shook it gently, and the coins sounded like a small applause. I thought, we did it. We kept our word to a day that did not exist yet, and now here it is. We talked about nothing and everything. "When?" I asked. "We're thinking early summer," she said. "Flowers will be nice then." "Where?" I asked, and she told me about a place with a long wall of windows and a floor that looked like water even though it was wood. "It's near the river," she said. "It feels open." "Open is good," I said. I wrote summer on my paper calendar with a little heart. After we hung up, I made tea with hands that kept finding their own way. The steam rose like a blessing. I sat at the table and watched the light move across the floor. I put a few dollars from my wallet into an envelope that said travel. I had not been asked to help, but I liked the feeling of making a small, quiet plan. That night when she called again, she was still breathless. "We all had dinner," she said. "Mark's mom is excited." "I am excited too," I said. "If you want, I would love to sew your veil, or even just a small detail by hand. Something only you and I would know." There was a pause that had a polite shape. "Let me ask the planner," she said, and her voice was kind when she said it. "She has a whole look in mind." "Of course," I said, and I smiled to make my voice bright. "It's your day. I just wanted you to know I'm here with my needle if you want it." "We'll figure it out," she said. "I love you, Mom." "I love you," I said. After we hung up, I took the small roll of ivory netting from my drawer and held it a moment. I did not cut it. I put it back, wrapped with a blue thread as if a promise could wait. Inside the first week, plans began to grow like vines. There were dinners to meet friends. There were appointments to see dresses. "We'll FaceTime you, Mom," she said one Friday afternoon. "I want you to see." I sat with my phone on the table, the battery full, the kettle ready. I folded towels and listened for the little ring. It did not come. When my phone finally buzzed, it was a message with hearts and a picture of 3 girls in a mirror laughing. "Sorry," she wrote. "It was loud. I'll call you tomorrow." "They are busy," I told myself. Busy is good. Busy means life is happening. The next week there was a dinner. "It's a little late," she said, "but we'll call you from the table." I put on my soft sweater as if they could see me. I set my phone beside my tea and waited the way you wait for bread to rise. The call didn't come. Later, she sent a picture of dessert that looked too pretty to eat. I typed, "Looks lovely, sweetheart," with a little cake emoji. My phone did not know how to show a heart that is proud and also a little empty. One afternoon, I walked past the jar on the shelf and put my hand over it like a woman telling a restless dog to stay. I remembered a day when she was 10 and saved $1 in quarters to buy ribbon for her friend's birthday. "A blue ribbon," she said, because she always wanted a river. I found that same blue ribbon in a drawer now and smoothed it with my fingers. It still had a curve to it, as if it remembered the body it had once touched. The first boundary came on a slow Sunday call. We were talking about the color of napkins. "We're keeping the guest list small," she said. "Mark's family is big and the venue counts by the chair. It's getting tight." I nodded even though she could not see me. "Small is nice," I said. "Small feels like breath you can hold." "We just want it simple," she said. "Not crowded." "I understand," I said, and I did mostly. A wedding is a bowl you try to fill just right. Too much and it spills, too little and it looks hungry. But after we hung up, I sat at my table and tried to count the chairs in my head. I couldn't find mine for a moment. I told myself, don't be silly. Of course there is a chair for a mother. The air around all the talk began to feel more formal. Patricia's voice, when I heard it, had a way of making rooms neater. "We want clean lines," she said once, when Nora put me on speaker and we were talking about flowers. "No clutter." "Clean lines are pretty," I said. I imagined a white table with no crumbs and a ribbon pressed flat. Another time, when they spoke about who might get what role, Patricia said, "We need to manage optics." I wrote the word down on a piece of scrap paper and looked at it. Optics. I held it on my tongue. I didn't know it was a word that meant we want things to look a certain way, even if they are not that way. I thought maybe it meant pretty pictures. "Of course," I said, "whatever makes you feel happy." There was a group chat for planning. I knew because once when we were walking to the bus together, Nora's phone lit up with a flurry of messages, and I saw the little circle icons, all of them in a row. I did not see my picture there. "I'll catch up," she told Mark, smiling. "Tessa has ideas." "Tessa?" I asked. "The planner," she said. "She's amazing. She keeps everything on track." I smiled and told myself, good. Someone to help her carry all the pieces. I started to find out about decisions after they had already been ironed flat. The save the date card arrived in my mailbox, and it was elegant and sweet. I called Nora to say so, and she said, "Oh, did you like the font?" I did not know fonts had names like people. Once she sent me a picture of her standing in a dress that was not her wedding dress, but a try-on. The lace was like frost, and she was beautiful. "We went with a different one," she wrote, "but this was fun." "You look like a joy I could see," I typed back. "I'm glad you had that fun." I kept busy. I hemmed suits for a neighbor who had an interview. I mended a pocket for a woman whose hands were too stiff to do buttons. In the evenings, my friend Leela came by with soup or with laughter, which is also a kind of soup. We sat at the table with mugs that were not a matching set. I told her about napkins and words that sounded like glass. I told her about pictures that arrive like notes you weren't meant to read but were given anyway. She listened and took my hand across the table. "This hurt has corners," she said softly. "Be careful how you hold it." I nodded. "I am trying," I said. She squeezed my hand. "It isn't just you," she said. "It's many things, their world, your world, how these worlds shake hands." She took a breath. "Make sure you don't bruise yourself while you try to be soft." I laughed a little because crying would have made me feel too small. "I will try not to," I said. Then we watched a silly show and laughed at the same parts. and the kettle made a small song in the background as if to say, "This is good too." The call that broke my breath came on a weekday afternoon when the sky was the color of paper. My phone buzzed across the table like it was trying to run away. I picked it up and saw Nora's name. I smiled and said, "Hi, my love." She didn't say hello back. She was quiet, and I heard the sound of a car door somewhere on her end, or maybe it was just my heart opening. "Mom," she said, and then she paused. "Mom, we can't afford you at the wedding." I heard the words and did not understand them. My mouth opened and closed once, like a person at the edge of a cold pool. I said the words back not to argue, but to make sure I had the right language. "You can't afford me." "It's not like that," she said quick. "It's the way the venue counts seats. It's complicated. They're strict. I'm so sorry." I looked at my table. I looked at my hands. They were strong hands. They had lifted a baby and a sewing machine and 100 grocery bags. "I can pay for my travel," I said gently. "I can pay for a hotel. I can even pay for a chair if chairs cost money there." I smiled a little because I wanted her to know I was trying. "It's not just money," she said. "It's the package and the sponsor. And we're capped. We're capped, Mom. I don't know what to do." We were both quiet for a second. I heard a bird outside my window and someone upstairs moving a chair. The world stayed where it was even though something in me had slid. "We can do a live stream for you," she said, and her voice was soft, like she was talking to a small animal. "The camera is really good. You'll see everything." I put my hand on my chest because my breath had flown to a high shelf. "We could have a tea the next day," she added. "Just us." "All right," I said. My throat was dry. "All right, my love." "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "I know you are." I looked at the blue sash on the back of the chair and at the jar on the shelf that still said, "Someday." I tried to keep my face soft even though she couldn't see it. After we hung up, the room was very quiet. The kettle was still. The sewing machine was a quiet animal on the table. I reached for the blue sash and put it in my lap. It was soft from years and from hands. I pressed it to my face and let my tears find it. I didn't make a sound. I didn't want to scare the sorrow away. I wanted it to have its place so it would not come find me later at night with sharper teeth. I sat like that until the light changed. The window cut a new shape on the floor. People walked by outside and laughed. A bus sighed at the corner like an old man. The world kept being itself. I took a piece of paper and wrote a line to myself so I could see it with my eyes. "A wedding is a day, a mother is forever." I wrote it twice. I folded the paper and slid it under the felt of my sewing box, the way I might slip a pattern piece under a heavier cloth so the breeze would not take it. I did not send it to her. It was not a line to send. It was a line to keep my back straight. That evening, I made soup. I cut carrots into careful coins, and I watched them fall into the pot. They made a soft sound. I stirred and listened for the story the water was willing to tell. When the soup was done, I took one bowl to my window and ate watching the sky. The spoon felt steady in my hand. For a few days, I moved very carefully. I said less. I saved my voice for what it needed to do. Call the pharmacy for Mr. Cho's refills, answer neighbors at the door, tell the kettle when to sing. My love for Nora did not change. It just had a new shape, like cloth you cut and turn and realize the pattern goes another way than you thought. In bed at night, I tried to imagine what it would be like to watch your child's wedding on a screen. I told myself that people do that sometimes for many reasons. War, distance, illness. I tried to put myself with them, a quiet member of a large, invisible choir. But then I saw the blue sash. I saw a chair with a name on it. I heard a little girl say, "Even if I'm taller than you," and I had to turn over and put my hand under my cheek like I was keeping something from falling. When I spoke to Leela again, I told her in the calmest words I could find. She listened and put a napkin in my hand. "You've been careful," she said. "You've been kind." "I won't break her," I said. "I won't throw this like a plate." "No," she said. "You won't. You couldn't if you tried, but you can still be honest." Quiet honesty is a tool too. "I know," I said. "I'm waiting for the right stitch." "You'll feel it," she said. "Your hands always know." I held my hands up and looked at them like they belonged to someone whose name I knew. Then I picked up my needle again and began to work, one simple line at a time, because sometimes making straight seams is the only way to keep from coming apart. Yesterday, I had a quilt to return. It belonged to a woman who had asked me if I could fix the middle where the stitches had come loose like a mouth. It was a heavy quilt, old and full of small stories. I had mended it with care, tying off each end with a tiny knot like a prayer that would hold. I wrote to Nora in the morning. "I'll be in the city later," I said. "I can drop off the quilt at your place and say hello if you're there." She sent a quick heart and a message. "I'll probably be around. Come by." By the time I reached her building, the afternoon had that gray light that makes everything look gentle. I buzzed and the door opened. Mark greeted me with a warm, surprised smile. "Ms. Alvarez," he said, and then he corrected himself. "Maria, come in." "Thank you," I said, and I lifted the quilt a little to show it like a cake I had baked. "Nora just stepped out," he said. "She ran to get something for a fitting. She said she'd be back quick. Please, wait if you like. Do you want water, tea?" "Water is fine," I said. I followed him in and put the quilt down on the back of their couch, smoothing the corner as if it could feel. Their apartment was elegant in a way that made me move a little slower so I wouldn't disturb anything. The furniture looked like it belonged to a thoughtful person. There were plants that were not wilting. On a side table by the window, there was a leather binder half-tucked under a throw, and beside it a tablet blinked to life with a gentle sound, like a small bell. "Sorry," Mark said, hearing the sound. "I'll silence it." He put the water on the table and stepped away to take a work call near the kitchen. "I'll just be a minute," he mouthed. I sat on the edge of a chair and held the cold glass in my hand. The tablet screen had lit up with a notification. I did not reach for it. I am careful with other people's things. But my eyes are not hands, and sometimes they touch without asking. The words on the screen were large. "Final guest list update," it said. And under that, in the preview, I could not help but see there was a line. "Mob, mother of bride, excluded per sponsor guidance." The room did not move. I did not move. The glass in my hand sweated a little, a tiny drop running down like a tear. I watched it and tried to think only about the drop. It reached my finger and stopped. Another notification nestled under the first like a child trying to hide. "Comped seating covered by Patricia Caldwell, no capacity issue." I looked away at the curtain at a plant whose leaves looked like little paddles. I breathed. I put the glass down without letting it make a sound. The binder on the table had one corner open like a mouth about to speak. I do not snoop. I do not open things that are closed, but this was open, and the top page showed words without asking. At the bottom of the page in the corner, there was a printed invoice in neat type. "Family package complimentary." The numbers were zeros. The air felt both thin and heavy, like a shirt that is wet. Another ding, softer this time, and a new subject line arrived. "Optics and family of origin considerations," it said. Under it, before the message slipped away, I saw a reply name, Tessa, and a line I wish I had not read. "We can arrange a day after tea, no mob mentioned during ceremony." I stood up very slowly and stepped back from the table like it could burn. I held my hands out a little to the side, like a person near a hot stove who knows where not to touch. My heart was loud in my ears, but my face felt calm, the way a lake looks calm even when fish move under it. "Everything okay?" Mark asked from the kitchen, his voice light, distracted by work and by trying to be polite. "Yes," I said. "The water is lovely, thank you." I think I even smiled. My mouth knew its job. I looked away from the tablet and the binder and found a bookcase that felt safe. Books sat there in rows, and photos stood like small windows into other rooms. In one frame, behind the glass, I saw something folded. A piece of paper, creased in half. On the outside of the fold, there was my handwriting. I knew it the way you know your own voice on a recording. "For later," it said. I had written those words years ago on a day when Nora cleaned her room before moving to college. We found the note she had written when she was 11, and I had saved it in a drawer for years. I gave it back to her then, and I wrote "for later" on the outside so she would keep it safe. Just seeing those words now made my eyes sting. I did not pull the paper out. I didn't need to. I knew what was inside. a handwriting that was too big for the lines, words that were simple and sure. "Mom, when I get married, will you walk me down the aisle, even if I'm taller than you?" I put my hand on my throat because something in it felt like a small animal that had forgotten how to breathe. I looked at the quilt on the couch and took a step toward it. I picked it up because I needed to hold something heavy that wasn't my heart. "Mark," I said softly, "I just remembered I need to be somewhere. Please tell Nora I dropped the quilt and that I love her." The words came out even. I was proud of them. They did not wobble. He covered the phone with his hand. "Are you sure? She'll be back any minute." "It's all right," I said. "Another time." I folded the corner of the quilt down so the repaired part showed, like a leaf turned to the sun. "Tell her I fixed the center." He nodded. "She'll be happy," he said. "Thank you." "Thank you for the water," I said. I put the glass near the sink as if that would help. I walked to the door with my shoulders square and my steps quiet, the way you leave a nursery when a baby has just fallen asleep. The hallway smelled like fresh paint. The elevator was slow. In the mirror inside it, I saw my face and thought I looked like someone trying to be brave in a movie where no one throws anything. Outside, the city felt faster than usual. I walked to the bus stop and stood with my arms folded so my hands would not shake in public. On the bus, I sat by the window and watched the city peel by in strips. People carried their groceries and their afternoons. A boy with a skateboard stepped on and off the curb like it was a wave. The streetlights were not on yet, but the sky had that look of getting ready. I thought of stitches, how each one secures a little piece, and how a seam can come undone with one long pull if you aren't careful. By the time I reached my neighborhood, the light had made soft squares on the sidewalks. I unlocked my door and called out to no one because it felt good to hear a voice. I went straight to the table and sat. The blue sash was there because I had left it after the call where I cried quietly into it. I placed it across my knees like a blanket. There was a feeling inside me that wanted to do something loud. It wanted to pick up a phone and spill words like a bag of marbles hitting the floor. It wanted to say, "How dare you make me into a cost?" It wanted to say, "I am not a line you can strike through on a list." I let that feeling sit in a chair. I gave it tea in my mind. I let it speak to me without letting it go outside and break anything. "I hear you," I said to it, "but we will not be cruel. We will not turn into the very thing that hurt us." I set the sash on the table and got a piece of paper. I uncapped a pen and held it for a long time before it moved. I thought about all the words I could write. Angry words are heavy and quick. Sad words are slow and long. I chose honest words that would help her, even if they stung me. "Dear Nora," I wrote, "I went by your place to drop off a quilt. I am sorry I saw some things that were not meant for me to see. They were in the open, but still I am sorry. I am not writing to make you feel bad. I am writing because I love you and I want you to be able to breathe." I paused and pressed my thumb to the paper near the corner, not hard enough to leave a mark. Then I continued. "I understand that image can be scary. I understand it is easier sometimes to tell a small story about money than a bigger truth about fear. I understand the feeling of wanting everyone to approve. I have wanted that too." I added, "I need you to know that I am not angry, I am sad. There is a difference. Anger burns fast. Sadness asks for a chair and time. I am sitting with mine. You do not owe me the shape of your wedding, but I would like to offer you a choice. If you want me at your wedding," I wrote, and my hand did not shake, I will come quietly. I will sit wherever you ask. I will wear what you ask. I will pay for myself. I will bring only my heart and my hands. I do not need to be announced or to be seen by anyone's camera. I want only to witness your joy. If you do not want me there," I continued, and I felt the words land like small stones, "I will accept that. I will watch from my kitchen with my hand on my heart. I will keep the kettle quiet so I can hear your vows through the screen. I will not make a scene. I will not make Mark or Patricia uncomfortable. I will not tell anyone a cruel story about you. I will love you in a way that does not bruise you." My phone buzzed once before I turned off the lamp. It was a message from Mark. "Thank you for the letter," he wrote. "I didn't know how far we had drifted. I'm grateful you didn't throw a stone. See you tomorrow." I typed, "See you tomorrow," and put the phone face down. Sleep came like a neighbor who knocks once and then comes in quietly. I lay on my side, hands together under my cheek, and thought of a narrow ribbon hidden in a dress and a short veil ready to be lifted. Somewhere in the city, people were setting tables and polishing glass. Here, I was setting my heart in the right place. I fell asleep before the kettle could miss me. The wedding day arrived with sunlight on my floor in squares that looked ironed. I woke early, not because of nerves, but because my body has always been a good alarm. The kettle made its small blue flame and sang when I asked it to. I drank my tea and thanked it for all the days it had kept me company. I arrived at the venue a little early with my dress on a hanger and my heart in my hands. Nora's room was bright and full of flowers and nervous laughter that had a happy edge. When she saw me, she smiled in a way that made the room quiet for a small second. "Mom," she said, "you look like home." I helped her with the last buttons on the back of her dress. My fingers were calm and sure. "I am trying not to cry," she said. "You can cry," I said. "You can also breathe." We both did, and the air felt like it was on our side. We stood together in front of the mirror, a tall daughter, a small mother. Both of us were beautiful in the ways we were made. I placed the short veil and smoothed it. "There you are," I whispered. "I know you." She touched the hidden place where the blue ribbon lay and nodded like a person who had found the key in her pocket. When it was time, someone opened the doors and the music began, simple and clear. I took Nora's arm. We stepped into the aisle together. The floor felt firm under our feet and the faces were a blur of love and light. We walked halfway. I counted the steps without counting. At the place we had agreed, I stopped and turned to her. I pressed her hand. "You are ready," I whispered. She smiled with wet eyes. "I am," she said. I let go and stepped to the side, and she walked the rest of the way into her life. Mark met her halfway with his own small bow of a heart, and they went forward together. I noticed Patricia at the front, her hands tight at first, then softer as she watched us. She gave me a small nod, and I returned it. The room had agreed to be kind. Mark looked at me, and his eyes held a clear apology. I nodded once to say, "Thank you. We do not need more words." The ceremony was simple. The officiant spoke about promises as daily things, not just big words. The vows sounded like water over stones, soft and steady, not trying to impress anyone. Rings were exchanged, not to lock anything in, but to remind fingers of what they hold. I sat and let joy move through me like light moves through a thin curtain. At the reception, there were small lights and bigger feelings. People clinked glasses and laughed in a way that made the room warmer. When it was time for toasts, I stood with a little card in my hand that had nothing written on it. My voice was clear without being loud. "I once saved pennies in a jar and called it our wedding jar," I said. "I didn't know the real savings was in the days we had together. I wish you both a lifetime of small, good days." The room was quiet in the right way. Then there was soft clinking, and a few people wiped their eyes. I sat down. I had said enough. Later, I saw Patricia watching Nora dance with her friends. She looked at me and then at her son, and her face softened again like dough after resting. She came over and touched my arm. "You raised a strong woman," she said. "Thank you for letting today be today." I smiled and said, "We are all learning." It was the truest thing in the room. When the night ended and the shoes were off and the flowers leaned a little with happy fatigue, we did not go to a grand breakfast at a glass place. We came here instead, to my little apartment, just the three of us. I put the kettle on. I sliced bread and warmed it. I cut pears because some habits are vows too. The veil was folded on a chair like a napkin after a good meal. The light came in the window and found the edge of it and made it glow. When Nora sat, the blue ribbon inside her dress peeked a little at her waist like a child smiling from behind a curtain. Mark saw it and smiled. "Something old," he said. "Something true," I added. We ate eggs and toast and jam that tasted like a summer I had put in a jar. We talked about nothing important and everything important. We talked about how vows are a season you keep growing, not a day you make perfect. The kettle kept time like a soft clock. When they left, they hugged me at the door a long time, the kind of hug that makes you feel your life has a shape you like. The apartment was quiet again, but it was a different quiet. It had one less hurt inside it. I washed the 3 cups and set them upside down to dry. The sun moved across the floor as if it also had a list of small good things to do. I thought of the empty seat I had feared. It was not at the wedding. It was here at this table, where shame used to sit like an uninvited guest. That seat is empty now. Love sat down in it instead without asking for permission, and it fit. If you are listening to me and holding something that hurts, I want to tell you this softly. Love does not demand a place, it makes one. It builds a chair. It pulls it close. It waits until there is room for 2. A wedding is only a day. The way we hold each other is the life. We do not need perfect words for that. We need quiet hands, honest voices, and the courage to stitch again where the seam came loose. And maybe a short veil, light as a promise, ready to lift when it is time to walk forward. I know about the sponsor and about the package and about optics, I wrote finally, simple and clear. I wish I did not, but I do. Money is not the real issue. Please do not carry the burden of that lie. It is heavier than you think. I signed it, always Mom. I sat for a minute and read it out loud in a whisper. It sounded like a person trying to carry a full bowl without spilling. It sounded like me. I put the paper in an envelope and felt how thin it was. I wanted to add something that felt like my hands, since my hands had not been allowed in many rooms of this process. I went to my sewing box and found a spool of thread. It was the exact ivory that she had described once in a hurry on a Sunday call. Not white, she had said. Not cream, in between. I had found it at a shop and bought it because I like to be ready. I held it now and thought, this is the color of love that does not need to be seen to hold. I tucked the spool into the envelope with the letter. It made a small, round bump. I closed the flap and pressed it with the side of my hand. Then I put on my shoes and my soft sweater and went out again into the evening that was almost night. The bus was not crowded. The city lights had begun to bloom. I stood outside Nora's building and looked up toward windows that all looked the same. I did not ring. I placed the envelope at her door with care, tucked a little bit behind the corner so it wouldn't slide away if someone brushed past. I stood there for a moment with my hand resting on the door as if I could feel the life on the other side. Then I took my hand away and walked back down the hall, the steps of my shoes making a small, steady rhythm. In the elevator, I breathed in and out, counting quietly. I did not cry. Tears are not always the best messengers. Outside, the air was gentle. The bus came quick. I sat by the window again. I watched the city pull itself together for night. In my lap, my hands lay open. I felt as if I had set something down that I had been holding under my arms too long. It left a warm print on me. At home, I did not turn on the big light. I made tea in the soft glow of the stove. I sat at the table and looked at the blue sash, at my sewing machine, at the little note tucked under the felt that said, "A wedding is a day, a mother is forever." I do not know what tomorrow will bring, I thought, but I know who I am, and I know how to love without pushing. Then I went to bed. I closed my eyes. I listened to the night. It sounded like a clock moving forward, one small tick at a time, whether someone was watching it or not. That evening, there was a knock at my door that sounded like someone exhaling after holding their breath. I looked through the peephole and saw only the top of Nora's head because she was standing close, as if she needed the door to hold her up. I opened it, and there she was, no makeup, red eyes, the envelope in one hand, the little spool of thread in the other. She looked like my child again, not a bride, not an employee, not anyone's anything except mine. "Mom," she said. I lied. It wasn't about money. I stepped back and let her in, and I closed the door softly. She went straight to the table and put the letter down like it was a stone that had been heavy to carry. She held the spool and looked at it like it might speak first. I touched her shoulder and then her cheek, because sometimes you need to touch both the place that is strong and the place that is tender. "Sit," I said. "I'll put water on." The kettle's handle felt cool in my hand. I filled it and set it on the burner. The small blue flame made a sound like a sigh. We sat at the table with our hands close and our eyes soft. We didn't speak for a long minute. The apartment knew how to be still with us. The kettle began to murmur, a tiny sound that said, "I am here, I am doing my work," slowly. When it sang, I lifted it right away so it wouldn't cry longer than it needed to. I poured the water over tea leaves and the air filled with something like comfort. Nora wrapped her hands around her mug. She watched the steam and then watched me, her mother who had seen her first ever sneeze and her first ever step. She swallowed. I felt small, she said. Around Patricia's friends, around the planner, around pictures I haven't even seen yet. I nodded and let the words be the only sound for a moment. She took another breath. I worried your simple dress would stand out in the wrong way, she said, and then winced at herself. I'm ashamed to say that. I am ashamed of my own shame. I did not flinch. I have heard worse from people with good hearts on bad days. She stared at the table. I made up numbers and rules to cover that shame, she said. I told you it was about seats, about packages, about caps. I told myself I was protecting the day, maybe even protecting you from whispers. She shook her head and pressed her lips together. But I was protecting myself, she said. I was protecting myself from being seen as less by people who don't know me, and I let Patricia handle things and I lost my voice. Every time she said optics, I nodded. Every time Tessa said we can arraign, I agreed. It was easier to say, we can't afford you, than to say, I am afraid of being judged for where I come from. I let her words sit on the table like a bowl between us. I put my hand near hers, not touching, not grabbing, just near. You cannot protect love with a lie, I said softly. You can protect an image, maybe, but that is glass. It breaks when someone breathes. Love is different. She looked up and her eyes were wet but steady. I continued, because the other sentence had been waiting in me for days. Shame makes people pull the thread that holds them together, I said. We think if we pull and pull we can remove the part we don't like, but we end up undoing the seam. She let out a breath that shook, and then a small laugh slipped through it like light. You always talk about thread, she said. It makes more sense to me now. Good, I said. I want to speak in a way you can hold. She wiped her face with the back of her hand like a child, and then she sat up straighter. Mark has been going along, she said. He isn't cruel. He keeps saying, it's their gift, they have opinions. He doesn't want to fight with his mother. He says we will be married one day only once and it's not worth a war. I nodded. Peace is nice, I said. But there is a kind of peace that costs too much. It costs the truth. That is not a peace that lasts. She nodded too. He didn't tell me about those emails, she said. He said he didn't know the planner wrote that thing about not mentioning you during the ceremony. I don't know if that's true or if he didn't want to see it. He keeps thinking we can manage feelings after. He doesn't know feelings don't like to be managed. We were quiet again. The kettle clicked as it cooled. A car went by outside. And a dog barked once like a period at the end of a sentence. I put my hand over hers finally. Make your own home right now, in this moment with your choice, I said. Do not wait for a house or a day or a paper. A home is made by what you say yes to and what you say no to. She looked at our hands, hers bigger than mine now, and she nodded like someone who had found a path in tall grass. She stood and wiped her face again, this time with the napkin. I'm going to call him, she said. Here, in your kitchen, I need the kettle's sound near me. Call him, I said. I got up and made space for her by the window where the light always falls nice in the evening. She dialed and he picked up quick, as if he had been holding the phone already. Hey, he said. You okay? I'm with my mom, she said. Her voice was steady and kind. I have something to say. Okay, he said, softer. My mother is coming to my wedding, she said. She will be seated, and I want her to walk me halfway down the aisle, and then I will walk the rest alone, or with you meeting me, and there will be no conditions. There was a silence that was full of a lot of years. I could hear the small sound of his breath in the speaker. All right, he said at last, and his voice had changed. It had the sound of someone who had put something heavy down. I'm sorry, I should have stood up before now. Thank you, she said. We will adjust the list. We will call Tessa. We will do what we need to do. I'll call Tessa, he said. I'll talk to my mom. We can cut my colleagues. We can do that. It should have been that from the beginning. I'm sorry, Maria, he added, speaking toward the room. I'm sorry I didn't make this clear sooner. I stepped closer so he could hear me. Thank you, Mark, I said. We are all learning. We are, he said. We'll fix it. Then he said something that made me like him more. We'll fix it now, not later. Good, Nora said, and they hung up. She held the phone in her hand for a moment like it was warm. The next call is harder, she said. I have to call Patricia. I know, I said. You can do hard things in a soft voice. She dialed, and there was the sound of rings that seemed to count the seconds of my life, too. Hello, darling, Patricia said when she answered. Her voice was smooth as always, like a ribbon drawn between fingers. Hi, Patricia, Nora said. I need to tell you something. This is my mother, she began, then paused and laughed at herself. I mean, I am with my mother, and I am telling you that she is coming to my wedding. She will be seated, and I want her to walk me halfway down the aisle. Then I will walk the rest alone, or Mark will meet me, and there will be no conditions. There was a polite silence. You can hear when someone is choosing the right words from a set they keep only for certain occasions. Nora, Patricia said slowly, we discussed the framework, the optics. You know the guest count is at capacity. There are expectations. If the money has strings, Nora said gently, we will cut them. We will move the wedding if we have to. But I hope we do not have to. I hope we can do this together. On the other side, air moved through a nose, a little heavier than before. It's not the money, Patricia said. It's the arrangement. It's the visual story. We wanted to make everyone comfortable. I did not want your mother to feel out of place. Sometimes people can be unkind without meaning to be. I understand, Nora said, but I love my mother. I will not hide her to make anyone comfortable. She taught me what love looks like when there are no pictures. Another pause. I pictured Patricia sitting very straight in a chair that does not creak. I pictured her holding a pen like a baton and tapping it gently against a pad of paper. If this is what you want, she said at last. Her voice had softened, not warm yet, but less brittle. We can make adjustments. Thank you, Nora said. We will reduce the corporate invites. We will invite only the people who know our names without a program. I will speak with Tessa, Patricia said, and then very softly, I hope your mother knows I meant no harm. I think she knows, Nora said. We are all learning. They ended the call like two people who had crossed a narrow bridge without falling into the river. Nora set the phone down and rested her head on her arms for a moment, the way she did when she was small and tired after school. I rubbed her back and said, You did good work. She sat up and took a deep breath. We need to tell Tessa, she said. I need to say it myself so there are no misunderstandings. Do it, I said, and I poured more hot water over the same leaves. Tea that is steeped twice has a softer strength. The call to Tessa was quick and practical. We're updating the plan, Nora said. My mother is attending. She will have a seat. She will join me for the first half of the aisle. Please update the scripts and the list. Understood, Tessa said, and I could hear papers moving. We will adjust the floor plan. We will revise the timeline. Congratulations again. When Nora hung up, she looked both tired and new. There is a look people get when they step into themselves in front of you. It is a kind of light that starts small and then finds its own size. I thought, she is making her home. She is building a house that can hold her truth. In the days that followed, the list changed shapes like a flock of birds turning. A few corporate names slid away. A few real friends came back. I saw names on a paper that made my heart feel the way it does when you taste a soup and know you have the salt right. Nora emailed a cousin she hadn't seen in a while. She wrote to her childhood friend from the bakery, the one who once put flower handprints on her jeans because she hugged too hard. She called Reverend Nolan, not to change the officiant, but to ask for a blessing over the phone from back home. He said a soft prayer, and it sat in the room like a warm coat. The day after tea that was planned at a place with glass walls became a simple breakfast here, in my little apartment, just the three of us. To breathe, Nora said. To be ourselves for a minute without an audience. I said yes, and thought about eggs and bread and jam that tastes like summer when you spoon it out in winter. I took out my sewing kit the night after the calls and laid the pieces on the table like a map. I chose the ivory thread from the spool I had tucked into the letter and threaded the needle with hands that knew how to work in quiet. I spread the netting and cut a short veil, light as a promise, not meant to hide, only to soften. I stitched it by hand, small, even bites, the kind you almost can't see from a step away. I held it up to the lamp to see if the light liked it. The light did. It fell through like a blessing and left the shape of something gentle on the table. I set it aside on a clean towel and smiled at it like you smile at a sleeping child. Nora asked me to come with her to a fitting. The seamstress was kind and curious, and she made space for me at the table where she pinned. "May I add a small ribbon inside the lining?" I asked. "Just a narrow one. No one will see it but my daughter." "Of course," she said. She set the gown aside on a padded form and gave me a quiet corner. I took a sliver of the blue sash and stitched it inside the lining at the waist, where it would hug her without showing off. "Something old," I whispered. "Something true." My needle made a soft path in and out like breathing. After, I pressed the spot with my warm palm for a moment. It felt like I was setting a seal no one else would know. Nora came over and touched the spot too, her finger resting there as if she could feel the years that ribbon had seen. "Thank you," she said, and her voice had the sound of a person who knows exactly what they are thanking you for. Leela took me shopping for a dress for me. "We will not hide you," she said in the store, "and we will not shout either. We will dress you like yourself." We chose a simple dress in a soft blue-gray, the color of early morning if you hold it in your hands. It fit without pinching. It let me breathe. On the day before the wedding, Leela came to my kitchen with bobby pins and patience. She stood behind me and smoothed my hair. "You have good hair," she said, "strong and stubborn." She fixed it in a way that let my face be my face. She dabbed a little color on my mouth. "There," she said, "now your outside looks like the inside we all know." I visited Mr. Cho to check on his pills and tuck his blanket at the foot of the bed. He looked at my dress on the hanger I carried and nodded approvingly. "You will be beautiful without trying," he said. "Dignity is just love standing up straight." I wrote that down on a small piece of paper and put it in my shoe for good luck. That night, I sat at the table and wrote a 3-sentence speech. "I am proud of you. I love you. Be gentle with each other." Then I folded it and slipped it under the sewing box felt with the other note. I decided I would speak from the heart instead, because hearts sometimes say what you forget to write. Before I went to bed, I set my shoes by the door and pressed my dress with the warm iron so the fabric would remember to lie quietly. I polished the small clasp of my bracelet with a corner of a towel. I took the jar from the top shelf and shook it one last time. The coins sounded like rain on a summer porch. I put the jar back without a label. Someday had arrived. It did not need a name anymore.